Well, I'm here at the Decatur, Illinois airport after maybe 3 years of putting this plan in action, and I just bought an airplane. A little bit about this plane. Currently 680 pounds total weight. It's 2-seat experimental, which means that it was built by an amateur. Essentially, someone purchased a kit and then completed this entire aircraft. We're going to be flying it halfway across America from Decatur, Illinois, all the way to Maine. Of course, got the camera set up. At this point, I had spent about 1 week in Decatur getting the Sonex ready for this journey. The aircraft was still in what's called Phase 1 flight testing. This is the first 40 hours of an experimental aircraft's life, and it's where the aircraft's performance and handling characteristics are documented. This aircraft had about 20 hours documented before I got there, which meant I had to fly another 20 hours in the surrounding area before I could depart on my journey. During this time, the aircraft owner and I thoroughly inspected the engine and the airframe and tested the aircraft at a wide range of speeds and weights. Being thoroughly satisfied with the mechanical state of the Sonex, I departed on my first day, where I made it around 100 miles to the Purdue University airport. I stopped here at Purdue to spend the night with a few friends, got a quick photo, and then departed on the next leg of the journey the following day. Next leg of the journey would take me 270 miles east of Lafayette, Indiana, past Cleveland, Ohio, to a small town called Carrollton, which was still in Ohio. I didn't focus much on filming this leg of the journey, however, here are a few of the highlights from along the way. I was cruising around 110 miles per hour up at 5,500 feet, and you can see that the landscape was pretty much just flat farmland, which made up about the first 4 or 5 hours of the journey. I did see the occasional other aircraft along the way, such as this one, which is in focus for approximately 1 frame. One of the more exciting things that I saw was this big grand lake out in the middle of nowhere, which seemed pretty out of place. I wonder what it's called. I didn't fully trust the fuel gauge on this aircraft, so I had to resort to the tried and true method of sticking my head underneath the panel to visually see how much fuel that I had left. This tank holds 16 gallons with 4-gallon increments drawn on in marker, which actually works pretty good to see how much fuel you have. I was especially excited to see trees starting to fill up the landscape. This would mark the transition from the Midwest farmland to the more wooded Northeast. This transition actually occurred shockingly quickly. It was almost like someone just drew a line across the entire United States from north to south. On one side there's farmland, on the other side there's just trees. And eventually I made it to Carrollton, which is where I would spend my second night of the 3-day journey. Got my stuff right here. It's gonna be my passenger for today. The baggage compartment, we got this, and it's tied around the bottom so it doesn't interfere with any of the controls. And we got the tow bar up there. That has actually been working quite well, so I'm pretty happy with it so far. A 680-pound airplane carrying me and my bags around works pretty good. A cat at the airport. Right here, someone's taking off on their Moonie. And we got this little kitty with me. Let's see here. Need some water? Hey, buddy. Want some water? Get out of here. Well, I guess I have someone helping me with the pre-flight today, so we'll get started. So today we're going to be trying to make it to Maine. Should be about 7 hours of flying. Should be a good time. So I figured I'd take the time to answer some of the questions you might be having. This aircraft is known as a Sonex, and I purchased it for $16,000. After insurance and taxes, this worked out to be almost every dollar I had to my name. I'm incredibly grateful to the owner, who gave me a very reasonable price, letting me fulfill my long-time dream of owning such a plane. The Sonex is designed to be as simple and affordable as possible. We'll see this later on in the cost breakdown of this cross-country flight.
So we've made it up to our cruise altitude of 5,500 feet there. Cruising along, engine temps, pressure is all looking good, and just got a beautiful view here. We got Pittsburgh over there, so we have to skirt on the outside of the Miynt Vale. That's essentially because our transponder hasn't been inspected, but overall so far, things are going pretty good. I'm actually pretty excited. We're gonna have a pretty good view of the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, as we're traveling through. We'll have to stay a little bit further away just to make sure that we don't run into any sort of mountain wave action or any sort of turbulence, but it should work out pretty good for us. I got a route that kind of takes a little bit south of them, but we should get some pretty good views. I'm just glad I'm not only seeing farms anymore.
Along the way, I saw this kind of cool winding river just out in the middle of nowhere, and needing a bit of a break from the monotony of just flying in a straight line, I decided to head down and bother the local town for a little bit. So this leg of the journey brought us from Carrollton, Ohio, 170 miles east to the Wellsville Municipal Airport in upstate New York. It's a beautiful area with the airport sitting on top of a hill at an elevation 2,100 feet above sea level. My first approach ended up being too high and too fast. Coupled with some gusty winds, I waved off the first landing and went around for another shot. The second time was looking much better. I continued with the landing and ended up having a nice and smooth touchdown. Now only if I could land on the center line. We made it to the Wellsville Airport. We got some self-serve gas we're gonna fill up. Not full tanks, we'll fill up with the cheaper gas once we get to our next destination. But we'll get enough gas to get there with plenty of reserves. And we're gonna stop here for a little bit in the FBO. It was definitely a bumpy ride getting here. 2.2 hours, burning about 4 gallons an hour, which is not bad for this plane. I was hoping to get it down to 3.5 or so. But I think with a couple climbs and a couple descents, it kind of decreased that performance a little bit. But I mean, 4 gallons an hour, how can you complain about that? Well, here's the Wellsville FBO. Pretty quiet here today. It's almost a little creepy. It's like a ghost town or something. But it's just stopping in here for a quick sec. And we're going to go get some gas out there. And then we'll be on our way. We got 5 gallons of gas. For $32.82, $6.55 a gallon. Not the worst. We're going to check the oil, make sure we got enough, and then we'll be buzzing on our way onto our next destination. This next leg would take us 130 miles across upstate New York to the Griffiths International Airport, just a little east of Syracuse. This would end up being one of my favorite legs of the journey. Along almost this entire leg, there were these amazing, long, slender lakes, which I would later find out are known as the Finger Lakes of New York.
Well, I'm sitting up here at 5,500 feet. I'm cruising along at 100 miles an hour. and I've got everything all set perfectly. My temperatures are all set. Got the mixture leaked out. In the past hour of flight, we've burned 3.5 gallons per hour, which is about as good as it gets. It's nice with the weather being a little bit calmer now. I've got the plane trimmed out to the point where I'm just kind of sitting along, enjoying the view, and looking out for any traffic. It's pretty incredible. 3.5 gallons per hour, that's $21 an hour in gas. So for $21, I can cruise up here at 100 miles per hour, beat the traffic, and enjoying life. So it's pretty amazing here. I'm kind of heading a little bit south, deviated maybe 20 degrees right, of course, just to avoid, there's a Class Charlie airport out there. And since I don't have the ADS-B installed yet, I gotta stay away from the Class Charlies, but that's no problem for me. But yeah, we got about 30 minutes till our next stop. We'll fill up on fuel, stretch your legs, and I'll see you there.
Unlike most of the small, uncontrolled airports I visited along this journey, Griffiths International had a control tower. This isn't a big deal though, and all you have to do is give them a call on the radio when you're 10 miles away. After this, it's just a matter of following their instructions and waiting for a landing clearance. I imagine this is one of the smallest planes the controllers have handled here. Most bigger airports like this have what's called an FBO, or fixed-based operator. These places will typically have lounges and are where you can get snacks, drinks, fuel, borrow a car, and more. Ironically, this specific place was called Millionaire, and they didn't even charge me a fee for stopping in and getting some snacks. But they might have been taking pity on me. Well, we stopped in Millionaire, the FBO, and we'll be on to our next spot here, so we'll see how it goes. After fueling up, I departed on the last 250-mile leg of the journey. Here I would experience some of the best views from along the way. After years of saving, months of planning, and 10 days away from home, I was ecstatic to be in the final stretch. This is where the reality of bringing this little plane home really set in. This plane caught me by surprise, as it didn't look like anything I had seen in the air before. Maybe a Piaggio? Let me know your guesses in the comments. As we near the end of this trip, I'd figured I'd break down some of the statistics from along the way. Overall, this journey took 11.5 flight hours and covered 1,065 miles, working out to an average speed of 92.5 miles per hour. I believe my average true airspeed was just over 100 miles per hour. I was fighting headwinds for much of the trip, which is pretty unusual for traveling east. Still, with how great the weather was for this stretch of days, overall, I definitely lucked out. Flying past the Appalachians is eye-opening, as there's a seemingly endless expanse of largely unexplored wilderness out there. This land continues like this for literally thousands of miles north into Canada. For the entire journey, I burned 48 gallons of gas, meaning I got 22.2 miles per gallon, and burned 4.2 gallons of gas per hour on average. Overall, this cost me $324. The cheapest one-way airline ticket I could currently find for the same journey cost me $366, meaning it was literally cheaper to fly myself home. Nice. These wind turbines were a very welcome sign. I originally learned how to fly at the Central Maine Regional Airport, and these turbines always meant you were within 15 minutes of home. My parents made it out to the airport and captured my final landing, just before sunset. And here we are several months later where I've finally gotten around to actually making this video. I'm sure you can tell by the jacket that it's a little bit later in the season. Since bringing this plane to Maine, I've been able to get a bunch of flying in. However, as you can see, maintenance, repairs, and most of all upgrades have kept this plane primarily on the ground. And I'm currently in the process of equipping this plane for IFR and night flying, which we're getting pretty close to that being done. We do have some pretty exciting upgrades, such as this landing light, which I'm currently working on installing. We have a nav and strobe light, which together will allow us to fly this aircraft at night. And the thing that's been really keeping this plane on the ground are the avionics upgrades. So as you can probably see, the panel looks a lot different than it did when we were flying the plane from Illinois to Maine. So we've installed a secondary radio, which also is a nav receiver, which functions as a VOR and localizer. And for $250 on eBay, it's pretty incredible that this thing actually works. On this side of the panel, we have a few upgrades as well, such as this fuel flow and fuel gauge. So this will display the gallons per hour burned as well as the fuel level in the tank. On this side, we have a volt and an amp meter. We have a inside and outside air temperature gauge, which if we're going to be flying this thing, IFR will be pretty important just to make sure that we're avoiding icing. We have a 2-person intercom, and especially exciting is this right here, which is a Garmin 155XL IFR certified GPS. And this actually ties into Dynon D100 here. So we'll be able to fly GPS non-precision instrument approaches in this aircraft. So lots of exciting things happening. Make sure to stick around for future videos and future updates, which there will definitely be some soon.